I was standing in the front row at my grandfather's funeral when the lawyer leaned in and whispered, "We need to talk privately." His tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either, just cautious. That was the first time I felt a shift, like the floor beneath my family was about to crack. A few hours later, in his quiet office above a bakery, he showed me the will. My name wasn't there, not even once. My cousin Melanie, however, was named as the sole heir. She inherited everything: the estate, the savings, the art collection, even the old beach house in Cape May we used to visit every summer. I couldn't believe it. Melanie? She barely visited Grandpa in the last 5 years. She lived out in California, only came around when there was a Arizona birthday, a tax conversation, or, as it turns out, a death. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there reading the will over and over, hoping the lawyer had missed a page. "I'm sorry," he said, but I could see in his eyes that something about this didn't sit right with him either. The signature on the will was clean, but too clean, too perfect. Grandpa's handwriting had become shaky near the end. I had letters to prove it, but this signature, it looked like it had been copied straight off an old bank form. I didn't want to believe it. But I'd been raised by my grandfather. After my parents passed, he became everything to my mentor, father figure, protector, and I knew him. I knew how much he valued fairness. He never would have cut me out of his legacy without a reason. Something was wrong. That night, I drove to Grandpa's house. Well, I guess now it was Melanie's, but I still had the spare key, the one he gave me when I turned 18. "You'll need this someday," he said. At the time, I thought it was just about houses and groceries. I didn't realize he might have meant something more. I went into his study, the one room Melanie had always hated. "It smells like old books and secrets," she used to joke. Maybe that was the point. I turned on the desk lamp, opened the bottom drawer, and there it was, the red leather journal, Grandpa's personal notebook. He wrote in it nearly every evening, usually right after the nightly news. The last entry was dated 3 days before he passed. It read, "Final review of the estate documents completed today. Must tell Jacob about the hidden clause. I want him protected no matter what." My hands were shaking. Hidden clause? What clause? And then I remembered. A few months back, he took me out to lunch, just the two of us. Over coffee, he talked about legacy and fairness. He mentioned putting a safety clause in placier provision that would only activate if the will was contested or changed under suspicious circumstances. "Not everyone thinks straight when money's involved," he'd said. "Even family." I laughed it off then. But now, it felt like he had predicted this moment. The problem was I had no idea where the clause was filed or how it worked. I spent the next week searching through everything, his filing cabinets, his safe, even the lining of old coats. Meanwhile, Melanie had already begun moving in, changing locks, hiring appraisers, and treating the place like a trophy she'd won. She acted like I didn't exist. She smiled when she saw me tight-lipped and victorious. "Grandpa always did say I had good instincts," she said once, sipping from his favorite whiskey glass. Guess he finally realized it. I bit my tongue. Not yet. I wasn't ready to strike. I needed proof. And then, on the 11th night, I found a fitting in the back of a photo frame. It was a single-page legal document signed by my grandfather and notarized by his old attorney. It read, "In the event of forgery, coercion, or suspicious alteration of any testamentary document, a secondary heir, Jacob Eli Turner, shall be granted full legal ownership of all contested assets, provided original documentation can be produced or verified through handwriting, authentication, or personal records." My chest tightened. This was it. The clause. My clause. But the battle was far from over. I needed to move quietly. If Melanie caught wind of this too soon, she'd destroy everything, and she had money, lawyers, and influence on her side. I was just the quiet grandson no one had paid attention to. Until now, I didn't sleep that night. The clause kept playing in my mind like a ticking clock. It was real, signed, stamped, tucked away where only someone who knew Grandpa deeply would have found it. The next morning, I took it straight to Mr. Dwyer, Grandpa's old attorney. He examined it silently, then nodded. "Your grandfather did mention something like this. a safety clause, just in case things got messy. He confirmed the document was legal technically a codicil that overruled the main will under suspicion of fraud. But suspicion wasn't enough. We needed proof. Real proof. That's when the real game began. Mr. Dwyer helped me file a formal objection, which temporarily froze Melanie's control over the estate. That same afternoon, Melanie called me. "Jacob," she said sweetly, "I don't know what you're trying to pull, but Grandpa made his choice. Let it go." I said nothing. Because I wasn't trying to win an argument, I was trying to expose the truth. We hired a forensic handwriting expert. 10 days later, the results came in. The ink used in the signature on Melanie's version of the will wasn't even manufactured until after Grandpa's death, and the pressure pattern didn't match his tremor-affected writing. It was forged. We took it to court. Melanie's lawyer tried to argue the analysis was inconclusive, but the judge wasn't buying it, especially not after we submitted Grandpa's journal, his private, handwritten entries confirming he'd finalized the estate for me and didn't trust certain relatives around his assets. Melanie grew desperate. She even showed up at my apartment unannounced, raging, "You're ruining everything. For what? A house full of antiques and memories?" "For the truth," I said. That's when the threats started. Anonymous emails, notes on my car. "Drop it, or you'll regret it." I handed them to the court. It all backfired. Her credibility sank even lower. The final nail in her case came unexpectedly from my phone. I found a short video from 3 months before Grandpa died. He was in his armchair, sipping scotch, smiling at the camera. "Jacob knows where the clause is. If anything happens, trust him. I already do." We played it in court. The judge leaned forward, then sat back, then ruled. There is clear evidence of will forgery. The clause stands. The estate belongs to Mr. Jacob Turner. Melanie didn't cry this time. She just froze. Her lawyer packed up in silence. But even as the gavel fell, I couldn't stop asking myself, what made her do it? What was she really hiding behind all the lies? The courtroom emptied, but the silence inside me didn't. I had won, but it didn't feel like a win. Not yet. Not until I understood why. Why would Melanie forge Grandpa's will? Why would someone risk prison, ruin, and humiliation just to take what wasn't theirs? I got my answer sooner than I expected. A week after the ruling, while cleaning out Grandpa's study for real this time, I found a second safe behind a false panel in the wall. I almost missed it. Inside were old letters, family documents, and one thin envelope with my name on it. Handwritten. Grandpa's writing. I opened it with shaking fingers. "Jacob," it began, "if you're reading this, then things have probably played out the way I feared. You're smarter than they think, and more patient. That's your strength. I always hoped this letter would never need to be read. But here we are. There's something I never told you about Melania, not out of malice, but because I didn't want to change how you saw family. She's not just your cousin, she's your half-sister. Your father-me son had a child with someone before your mother. He didn't know, I didn't know. But when Melanie showed up as an adult saying she was family, I believed her. I tried to help. I gave her chances. But greed poisoned her. She never cared about you or this family's legacy. Only what she could control." I stood frozen. Half-sister? That explains so much. The strange tension, her resentment, the unspoken edge in her voice whenever Grandpa mentioned me. I flipped the page. If she forged my will, I knew she would do it, out of fear that she'd be left with nothing. But I wanted you to know the full truth, not just legally, but emotionally. You didn't just earn this inheritance, you protected it, for both of us. My eyes burned. I sat there in the study, surrounded by the quiet presence of a man who had planned even for betrayal, who had seen the fracture in his family coming, and still chose to believe in love and trust and legacy. The next morning, I called Melanie. She didn't answer. I texted her. "I know everything, including the part you didn't know I knew." She replied 3 hours later. Just one line. "He loved you more." I hated that. I never saw her again. She moved to the West Coast, changed her name. From what I hear, she's still trying to reinvent herself, still chasing something that was never hers to begin with. As for me, I didn't keep everything. I sold the beach house and donated part of the estate to the Veterans Foundation Grandpa loved. I kept his journal, his chair, and the house. But most importantly, I kept his trust. Because in the end, this wasn't just about a will. It was about legacy, about knowing who you are even when the people closest to you try to erase it. And sometimes the most powerful inheritance isn't money, it's clarity, it's knowing that even when someone tries to write you out, the truth has a way of writing you back in.